video on electoral reforms. My name is Vishrut Abhinna, and I basically come from civil service background. I am currently a faculty with Unacademy, which is the most happening place in the country today in the field of quality online education. And as I said, I'm from civil service basically, and prior to my civil service stint, I was also assistant professor. And today I'm going to talk about this very special topic, electoral reforms. जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि चुनाव सुधार ये राइट फ्रॉम 1952 एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दा रहा है, particularly in view of the fact that there have been allegations of widespread use of black money in elections, and as regards the disqualification of candidates, there have been many issues, and there have been many issues as regards the very system of voting. Voting may be, of course, we have now started using voting machines, electronic voting machines, but there also, like, there have been allegations of tampering. But in any case, now I'm going to briefly present before you various aspects of electoral reform which become necessary in the present context, and let us try to understand and analyze how electoral reforms are going to help in a big way in improving the overall election process, and also in providing the people with better candidates, and better candidates with a clean and honest image. So what I'm saying is that if we look at the Association of Democratic Reform ADR report, which was published on 25th of January 2017. What this report states is that total declared income of national and regional parties between 2004-5 and 14-15 stood at 11,367 crores. And the total income from known donors was 16%. And the total income from other known sources, that including membership fee and the bank interest and other things, was 15%, leaving 69% of the total income from unknown sources. Of course, now contributions below 20,000 each. Now this amount of 20,000 has been brought down to 2,000. But at that time, in the year 2017, below 20,000, this amount, which was now 69%, a whopping amount from unknown sources, and thus untraceable. Comparing audited income with projected spending seems to indicate that political parties earned an additional large amount of black money. So that means that funding of political parties is a major issue as far as electoral reforms are concerned. As we can see that companies contribute to political parties, and a lot of amendments have been brought about in this regard to the existing laws, but still, like this problem of contribution of black money or money laundering or converting illicit sources of income received from illicit sources into legal sources, right? All these allegations have been there, and as we can make out here, that a large amount of contribution to political parties that goes without any known sources being there, right? So that is one aspect. And on 9th of May 2014, the Lok Sabha election of 2014, ADR, that is Association of Democratic Reforms, which we are talking about, that out of total 8,163 contesting candidates, 1,398, that is 17%, had criminal cases pending against them. And this I am talking about of 2014, that 17% candidates had criminal cases pending against them, and 11% with serious criminal cases, that is 889 candidates. And 27% were, crorpatis, means having enormous riches, capable of funding their own election campaigns. So thus one could conclude that the reforms instituted till date have largely failed and could even be considered responsible for driving parties into a greater dependency on black money, in a way, and rich criminal elements to contest election. ये एक बहुत ही गंभीर विषय है कि जो क्रिमिनल एलिमेंट्स है वो इलेक्शंस कॉन्टेस्ट कर पाते हैं और पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज उनको टिकट भी देती है, और बहुत सारे इस तरह के एलिमेंट्स है, मतलब इस तरह के बहुत सारे कैंडिडेट्स हैं जिनको पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज टिकट देती है, जिनका क्रिमिनल एंटीसीडेंट्स और कई सारे सीरियस क्रिमिनल चार्जेस उनके ऊपर रहते हैं। इसके बावजूद भी वो इलेक्शन लड़ते भी हैं और जीत भी जाते हैं कई केसेस में। तो दिस इज अ सीरियस इशू बिकॉज इट अफेक्ट्स द क्रेडिबिलिटी of our entire electoral process, right? And in that direction, electoral reforms becomes very, very important. Use of black money in political funding and giving tickets to criminal elements by political parties, criminal elements who are facing serious criminal charges. These candidates also, due to variety of reasons, muscle power, money power, and in direct and indirect influence on the decision maker, they eventually make their way to parliament and the state legislatures, and that is a very, very serious matter because, as I said, that it affects basically the very credibility of the democratic setup in our country. And if we look at various committees and commissions ever since the first general elections were concluded in 1952 have been set up, and just have a look at what different committees are briefly mentioning. Now, I'm just giving certain glimpses out of the reports of those committees. Vanchu Committee report of 1870, section 2.20. Now, in this connection, it has been pointed out that large funds are required to meet election expenses, and it's common knowledge that these are financed to a great extent by wealthy persons with lots of black money. And according to some, this is not the cause but an outlet for black money. And the situation is stated to have been further aggravated by the ban imposed recently on donations by companies to political parties. That ban was there. This report is of 1970. Of course, this ban is no longer there, and now companies can contribute to political parties, that we know. I will just talk about these various reforms which have been brought about. But this report clearly mentions that there was a big concern of contribution of black money to the whole process of election. Then Dinesh Goswami Committee report of 1990, just a glimpse into that, section 1.6 states the role of money and muscle power at election, rapid criminalization of politics, increasing menace of participation of known serious candidates, form the core of our electoral problems. So electoral problems, criminalization of politics. Now, this is a very big issue which is there before the nation. And of course, in piecemeal, this has been addressed by the various judgments of Supreme Court, by various amendments which have been made into the Representation of the People Act 1951, and of course by various parliamentary acts also. But still criminalization of politics is a major issue even till date. And the role of money and muscle power at elections, that everybody knows, it's a common knowledge, and increasing menace of participation of known serious candidates. I mean, we have to find some method to filter out the known serious candidates, so that people have more enlightened decision making at their disposal. Now, Gora Committee report, if you look at 1993, section 10.1, it says the various crime syndicates, mafia organizations have developed significant muscle and money power and establish linkages with government functionaries, political leaders, and others to be able to operate with impunity. Now, this is very serious. Now, this is of 1993, of course, but in more ways than one, it is still significant that that we know that the various crime mafia, syndicates, and mafia organizations, they still have significant muscle and money power, and they have established their linkages with the government functionaries and political leadership at different levels, and that is really ruining the very fabric of democracy in our nation, and that is ruining the very credibility of a democratic process in our nation. So these are serious allegations, and these are reports actually. These are glimpses from the reports which were set up for electoral reforms at different stages. And now, if we talk about the various committees which are related to electoral reforms, the various committees and commissions have examined our electoral system. We have seen the menace is so deep and so widespread, and it's a common knowledge. ये हम सभी जानते हैं कि चुनाव में जो है पर्टिकुलरली लोकल लेवल पे जो इलेक्शंस होते हैं, चाहे वो लोकल अर्बन बॉडीज़ के लिए हो, लोकल रूरल बॉडीज़ के लिए हो, स्टेट लेजिस्लेचर्स के लिए हो, या इवन पार्लियामेंट्री इलेक्शंस भी जो है मैल प्रैक्टिसेस एंड द यूज़ ऑफ मनी पावर, मसल पावर इज़ कॉमन नॉलेज. इसके साथ साथ ये भी हमें मालूम है कि किस तरह से कंबल बांटे जाते हैं, पैसे बांटे जाते हैं, राइट, वोट प्राप्त करने के लिए. ये तमाम चीज़ें जो है वो इलेक्ट्रल मैल प्रैक्टिसेस है, और कई बार जो है कैंडिडेट्स बूथ कैप्चरिंग करके यानी कि पूरे बूथ पे अपना आधिपत्य कायम करके, या किसी एक पर्टिकुलर पार्टी के सपोर्टर्स को वोटिंग अलाउ करके, और या इंटिमिडेशन करके. हमने देखा वेस्ट बंगाल के अंदर रिसेंटली जो इलेक्शंस हुए उसमें किस प्रकार से इंटिमिडेट करके पॉलिटिकल सपोर्टर्स को, एंड किसी एक पार्टी के लोगों को वोट नहीं देने दिया जाता, या दूसरी पार्टी के लोग ही वोट देंगे, या पूरी कंस्टिट्यूंसी में मतलब जो है पुलिस का इनएक्शन रहता है जो कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के अंडर में होती है, और जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की फोर्सेस रहती है, they do play a role, but their role is very limited, right? So what I'm saying is that there are a lot of aspects as far as the election reforms are concerned. A lot of issues are there, और ये बिल्कुल फैक्ट बात है कि अभी तक हमारे यहाँ पर फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शंस नहीं हो पाए हैं. अभी तक जितने भी इलेक्शंस अभी तक हुए हैं, 17th लोकसभा अभी चल रहा है, तो जो इलेक्शंस है उसमें हम ये नहीं कह सकते. हालांकि काफ़ी इम्प्रूवमेंट्स हुए हैं, देर इज़ नो डाउट दैट वी हैव सीन लॉट ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट, राइट. फॉर एग्जांपल अभी ब्रीफली हम उसकी बात करेंगे कि कौन कौन से रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं. और स्टेट फंडिंग ऑफ इलेक्शन हैज़ आल्सो स्टार्टेड इन अ बिग वे, और उसमें भी जो लिमिट है वो लिमिट भी जो है वो एक्सटेंड किया गया है कि कैंडिडेट्स जो है वो कितना उसमें पैसा खर्च कर सकते हैं. Sabha elections, for example, that limit has been set to 70 lakhs, for example, for parliamentary elections. And of course, we will talk about that limit briefly. And other improvements have taken place, right? Electronic voting machines is also a definite positive improvement in this direction. और VVPAT जो है वो भी एक पॉजिटिव वोटर वेरीफाइबल ऑडिट ट्रेल है, that is an improvement. But despite all this, I mean, election process still is marred by various malpractices, and it is, so to say, suffused with, large number of criminal activities, which are detrimental to the process of democracy in India. And since we declare ourselves to be a democratic state, it is necessary that India actually practices fair and legitimate means for election. And in that direction, electoral reforms become very, very important. And the first thing which I'm going to talk about today, after having discussed briefly the background of electoral reforms, that why is it necessary for us to have reforms in the first place, and why we have not been able to have reforms at the same time, and what are various challenges. That also I'll briefly talk about. So what I'm saying is that these various committees and commissions which have been there, for example, the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Amendments to Election Laws, 71 to 72. Then we had Tarkunde Committee. Now, Tarkunde Committee was not an official committee because it was appointed in 1974 by Jai Prakash Narayan during his total revolution, Sampurna Kranti. Jai Prakash Narayan, इनको महानायक कहा जाता है, महानायक जय प्रकाश नारायण की संपूर्ण क्रांति थी, उस मूवमेंट के दरमियान तारकुंडे कमेटी was set up in 1974 and this unofficial committee had submitted its report in 1975. दिनेश गोस्वामी कमेटी, जिसके बारे में ब्रीफली हमने डिस्कस किया, on electoral reforms in 1990, Anand Vora committee on nexus between crime and politics in 1993, where they clearly pointed out in general terms though, that there is a definite nexus in crime and politics. This needs to be uprooted. And Election Commission of India recommendations on electoral reforms 1998, Indrajit Gupta committee, जो कि former home minister भी थे, Indrajit Gupta committee on state funding of elections in 1998, and Law Commission of India 170th report on reforms of the electoral laws 1999. मतलब लॉ कमीशन ने भी स्पेसिफिक रिपोर्ट्स के अंदर कई सारे इलेक्टरल रिफॉर्म्स की बात की. And National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, which was headed by the former Chief Justice M.N. Venkatchalaya in 2000, submitted its report in 2002. Election Commission of India report on proposed electoral reforms in 2004, and second ARC, that is Administrative Reforms Commission of India report on ethics and governance in 2007. It was headed by Veerappa Moily. And then, of course, Tanka Committee, Core Committee was appointed in 2010 to look into the whole gamut of election laws and electoral reforms. J.S. Verma Committee report on amendment to criminal laws 2013, and Law Commission of India's 2044th report on electoral disqualification, and Law Commission of India's 255th report on electoral reforms. So all these reports become very, very important from the perspective of electoral reforms. Plus, we should not forget the whole number of, quite a sizable number of amendments which have been brought about to Representation of People's Act 1951. So we have had so many amendments in that been now and then by Parliament to bring about some reform or the other on paper, at least. And of course, on ground, in practice, many of these reforms which are on paper were not really practiced, right? We know that. We know the reality is very different than what is being stated or prescribed by the law. And that is the real cause of concern, that we have to check these criminal tendencies, these tendencies of excessive use of, the tendencies of use of black money, right? And in the whole election process. And of course, a whole lot of other issues which are involved in this are there. Particularly now that permitting candidates with who are charged with serious criminal offences, who are in jail. But of course, a Supreme Court gave an order that they were not to be allowed to even cast their votes, right, and contest elections. But Parliament brought about an amendment in Representation of People Act, and it was allowed. What I'm saying is that a lot of issues are involved therein. And based on recommendations made by the above committees and commissions, various reforms have been introduced. Now, these reforms can be seen prior to 1996, and reforms of 1996, which a major chunk of reforms were brought about in 1996, and reforms after 1996, and reforms since 2010. So, but before I talk about these reforms, let me emphasize briefly that from Unacademy now, a sizable number of selections have been given in the recent civil service examination, as we can make out that quite a number of candidates. In fact, top 20, 7 selections, and 21 to 100, 20 selections, and 101 to 761, 143 selections. So we can see that a large number of selections in civil service now from Unacademy, which is relatively a recent startup, and here we can make out that the second ranker Jagrati, Apala, a ninth ranker, and a whole lot of other candidates who made it to the top positions are from Unacademy. And one good thing is that you can subscribe to Unacademy courses, and you must. I mean, you know, the top educators of the country are associated with Unacademy because millions of students are associated with Unacademy, right? And why should you not be the one to get selected by your association through Unacademy? So what I'm saying is that the good news is that you can make use of my referral code VN10 and avail 10% discount on all subscriptions, right? Plus you get to have free enrollment for the Mega Combat through which you can win a scholarship, right? So then what I'm saying is that 23rd December 21, now a price hike is expected, and now price hike 3 months extension is there every 1 year, and plus GS and plus combo subscription. So what I'm saying is that high time that you should subscribe to the courses. And now take for example, we're starting the whole lot of courses 22nd of December, Mission 2022 and Lakshya 2022 and Mission 2023 and Lakshya 20. So the leading educators, right, they would all be engaging their students and guiding the students in their journey to success in civil service. And optional courses, of course, launched already 8th of December, and 15th December we are going to launch additional courses. Now, what I'm saying, free test series is available for UPSC civil service examination, for which you can enroll, but please remember that you must make use of this referral code VN10, my referral code for this purpose. And UPSC Mega Combat also you can enroll, and you can make use of this referral code for this purpose in order to enroll, that is VN10. Sir, so what I'm saying is that you get to have 19th of December 11 a.m. right. You can use this code VN10, and of course for future combats also. But in combat, now one good thing is that a lot of incentives, a lot of you know gadgets, exciting gadgets and gift vouchers are there for you to win. 1,000 lucky participants, they get to win these gift vouchers and exciting gadgets, right? And these, of course, in 1 hour you have to answer 56 questions for that, and you can win scholarships up to 100%. Plus, like you can get loan facility at 0% interest rate and no processing fee, flexible tenure and minimal paperwork. And with Iconic subscription, you get to have live mentoring, study planner, mains question answer practice sessions, and open house with educators. So all these great facilities are available with Iconic for a slightly extra charge. Now, if we talk of the reforms before 1996, right, I'll just cover the major reforms. I will not cover the whole gamut of reforms due to paucity of time. And lowering of voting age was one major reform which was brought about, and this was brought about by 61st Amendment Act in 1988, where the voting age was reduced from 21 to 18 years, right? And electronic voting machines in 1989, a provision was made to facilitate the use of electronic voting machines. And we all know that electronic voting machines is a positive step in the right direction, because it will avoid many hassles in the first place, and it will also avoid problems associated with pseudo voting. And EVMs, they are used for the first time in 1998 on an experimental basis in selected constituencies in the elections to the assemblies in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Delhi. And now EVMs were used for the first time in general elections in the entire state, the Assembly of Goa in 1999. Booth capturing, now in this direction in 1989, a provision was made for the adjournment of poll or countermanding of elections in case of booth capturing. Booth capturing basically means seizure of a polling station and making polling authorities surrender ballot papers. or taking possession of polling station and allowing only one's own supporters to exercise their franchise. So, and of course, it also includes threatening and preventing any elector from going to the polling station, and seizure of the place being used for counting of votes. So all that amounts to booth capturing, and of course, it's a big crime. And so provisions were made in the year 1989 for countermanding the elections wherever booth capturing was seen or reported. Electors' photo identity card, no APIC. This was one major step undertaken by the Election Commission of India. The use of electors' photo identity cards by ECI, surely making the electoral process simple, smoother, and quicker. Right. And in this regard, decision was taken in 1993 to issue photo identity cards to electors throughout the country. And we know that, I mean, largely photo identity cards have been issued to every voter right now. It's an ongoing process, and electoral rolls are normally revised every year, with 1st of January of the year as a qualifying date. Then, if we talk about the major electoral reforms after 1996, the National Front government headed by VP Singh appointed a committee on electoral reforms under the chairmanship of Dinesh Goswami, the then law minister. And the committee was asked to study the electoral system in details. And the committee, of course, submitted its report, and some of the major, you know, reforms. They are prohibition on the sale of liquor, for example. That, I mean, no liquor to be, or any intoxicant to be sold or given or distributed at any shop, or eating place or hotel or any other place, whether public or private, within a polling area, during a period of 48 hours ending with the hour fixed for conclusion of the poll. That means पोल के समाप्त होने, कंक्लूजन ऑफ द पोल के समाप्त होने के 48 घंटे पहले तक का जो समय है, राइट, उस दरमियान जो है 48 घंटे मतलब 2 डेज, वो 2 दिन के अंदर कोई भी लिकर उस पोलिंग एरिया में कोई भी बेच नहीं सकता है, और किसी भी जगह पर पोलिंग एरिया, राइट, अदरवाइज ऑफ कोर्स इट्स अ पनिशेबल ऑफेंस. एंड नंबर ऑफ प्रपोजर्स वो भी उसमें भी रिफॉर्म किया गया. एज फार एज nomination of candidates to parliamentary or assembly constituency should be subscribed by 10 registered electors of the constituency as proposers if the candidate is not sponsored by a recognized political party, right? And in case of a candidate sponsored by a recognized political party, only one proposer is required, and this was done in order to discourage the known serious people from contesting the elections. And in case of death of a candidate, पहले countermanding election जो होता था, election दोबारा करवाना होता था, but now it is not like that. Now, if the deceased candidate belonged to a recognized political party, the party concerned would be given an option to propose another candidate within 7 days. Right. Then, time limit for by-election has also been set, that now by-elections are to be held within 6 months of the occurrence of the vacancy in any House of Parliament or state legislature. And this condition is not applicable in 2 cases, where the remainder of the term of the member whose vacancy is to be filled is less than 1 year, or when the commission it certifies that it's difficult to hold elections within the set period. And contestant restricted to 2 constituencies. 2 से अधिक constituencies में एक साथ जो है nomination नहीं कर सकता कोई candidate. A candidate would not be eligible to contest from more than 2 parliamentary or assembly constituencies at a general election or at any by-election which are held simultaneously. Similar restrictions are also imposed for biennial elections, मतलब जो 2 साल में एक बार होते हैं, and by-elections to the Rajya Sabha. राज्य सभा का tenure 6 years का होता है, 1/3 of its members retire every 2 years normally, and biennial elections every 2 years, तो उसके लिए भी ये applicable है. Effective campaigning period, that has been reduced. The minimum gap between the last date for withdrawal of candidature and the polling date has been reduced from 20 to 14. 20 से reduced करके 14 days. These are some general reforms which have been brought about after the recommendations of, as I said, the Dinesh Goswami committee that we are talking about. Then यदि हम इलेक्ट्रल रिफॉर्म्स आफ्टर 1996 की बात करें, तो उसमें भी काफ़ी सारे इलेक्ट्रल रिफॉर्म्स हैव बीन ब्रॉट अबाउट. But I will right away talk about the declaration of criminal antecedents, assets, etc. by candidates. Right. This is a major reform. In 2003, the Election Commission issued an order directing every candidate seeking election to the parliament or state legislature to furnish on his nomination paper the information regarding what? Whether the candidate has been convicted or acquitted or discharged in any criminal offense in the past, or whether he or she was imprisoned or fined, or prior to 6 months of filing nominations, whether the candidate is accused of any pending case is there against him, or any offense punishable with imprisonment of 2 years or more, or in which the charges were framed or recognized, or cognizance was taken by a court, uske details, and the assets, immovable, movable, bank balance, etc. of a candidate and his or her spouse and that of dependents, सभी के assets का declaration करना होता है. Liabilities कुछ है तो any liabilities, particularly whether there are any dues of any public financial institution or government dues are there. And the educational qualification of the candidates, furnishing of any false information to the affidavit is now an electoral offense punishable with imprisonment up to 6 months or fine or both. Then changes in the Rajya Sabha elections also. In 2003, 2 changes were introduced in respect of election to Rajya Sabha. Domicile or residency requirement has been of the candidates contesting an election in the Rajya Sabha has been removed. And prior to this, of course, candidate had to be from the same state, and now it is no longer required. And introducing open ballot system instead of secret ballot system, Rajya Sabha elections, for elections to Rajya Sabha. And this was done to curb cross voting and to wipe out the role of money power during Rajya Sabha. Open ballot system instead of secret ballot system has been used insofar as Rajya Sabha is concerned. And under the new system, an elector belonging to a political party has to show the ballot paper after marking his vote to a nominated agent of that political party. Then, of course, parties entitled to accept contribution now. In 2003, the political parties were entitled to accept any amount of contribution from any person or company other than the government company. Right, and they have to resort to any contribution in excess of rupees 20,000 to the election. They have to report any contribution in excess of 20,000 rupees to Election Commission for making any claim to any income tax relief. Besides, the companies would get income tax exemption on the amount contributed to political parties. And the commission received representations from various associations of visually impaired persons for introduction of braille signage features in the EVM to facilitate visually impaired voters to cast their votes without any help of attendant. And the commission considered this proposal in detail and tried the braille signage feature in EVM during the by-elections to Asif Nagar Assembly constituency in Andhra Pradesh held in 2004. And in 2005, again, it was tried in one of the constituencies during the assembly elections of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Haryana. And again, in 2006, it was tried in one of the constituencies of states of Assam, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, and Kerala during assembly elections. 2008, it was tried in all assembly constituencies of National Capital Territory of Delhi during assembly elections. This is a major, and the commission now introduced similar braille signage features on electronic voting machines during general elections to the 15th Lok Sabha and simultaneous assembly elections in some states. So it's a major improvement to help out those who are visually impaired. Then I talk about the reforms which were brought about since 2010. They're the major reforms. Restrictions imposed on exit polls, for example. 2009 provision conducting exit polls. Exit polls मतलब voters जब वोट दे के आते हैं तो they are asked that to which party you have voted. So that is called exit poll. And so restrictions have been imposed on exit polls and conducting exit polls or publishing results of exit polls would be prohibited during the elections to Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. So no person shall conduct any exit poll or publish or publicize by means of the print or electronic media or disseminate in any manner the result of any exit poll during the period notified by the Election Commission in this. During the period notified by the Election Commission in this regard, right? So it is only during the period which is notified by the Election Commission. Beyond that period, of course, it can be done. Further, any person who contravenes this provision, it's a punishable offense. And exit poll basically is an opinion survey regarding how electors have voted in an election and how the electors have performed with regard to the identification of a political party or candidate in an election. Then time limit for submitting a case for disqualification has been put in place in 2009. This provision was made for simplification of procedure for disqualification of persons found guilty of corrupt practices, and it provided that for a 3-month time limit within which the specified authority will have to submit the case to the president, right, of a person who found guilty of corrupt practices, right, for determination as regards to disqualification of that candidate. And all officials were included in corrupt practice. So the definition of corrupt practices that has been broadened, and all officials. In 2009, this provision was made for the inclusion of all officials, whether in government service or not, appointed or deputed by the Election Commission in connection with the conduct of election, within the scope of corrupt practice of obtaining any assistance by a candidate for furtherance of the prospects of his election. Right. So any assistance, if somebody obtains any assistance from a contesting candidate, then this is regarded as a corrupt practice, and all officials have been covered under this, whether from the government service or non-government service. And security deposit, of course, has been increased so that, to filter out the non-serious candidates. For the Lok Sabha, for example, it is increased from 10,000 to 25,000, and for general candidates, and 5,000 to 12,500 for SC and ST candidates. Similarly, security deposit in case of state legislative assemblies is increased from 5,000 to 10,000 for general candidates and 2,500 to 5,000 for the SC/ST candidates. And of course, this was done basically to filter out the non-serious candidates, or to check the multiplicity of non-serious candidates. And then voting rights to citizens living abroad. They have, of course, in 2010, this provision was made to confer voting rights to the citizens of India residing outside of India due to various reasons. So every citizen of India whose name is not included in the electoral roll, or who has not acquired the citizenship of any other country, or who is absent from his place of ordinary residence in India due to employment or education or some other reason, shall be entitled to have his name registered in the electoral roll, right, in the parliamentary or assembly constituency in which his place of residence in India is mentioned in his passport. Then online enrollment in the electoral roll. Now, in 2013, a provision was made for online filing of applications for enrollment in the electoral roll. And for this purpose, the central government, after consulting the Election Commission, made the rules known as Registration of Electors Amendment Rules 2013. And these rules made certain amendments in the Registration of Electors Rule 1960. And of course, introduction of nota. This option is a major option, that none of the above. According to direction of the Supreme Court, the Election Commission made provision in the ballot papers or electronic voting machines as well for none of the above options, so that the voter who come to polling booth and decide not to vote for any of the candidates, the fray, are able to exercise their right not to vote for any such candidate while maintaining secrecy of their ballot. Then, of course, the provision of nota has been made since general election to state legislative assemblies in Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Mizoram, and city of Delhi and Rajasthan in 2013, and continued in the general election to state legislative assemblies of Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Odisha, and Sikkim in 2014, along with the general elections to the 16th Lok Sabha 2014. And of course, then I will not go into details of that. Introduction of VVPAT, that is Voter Verifiable Paper Audit Trail. That is an important thing. It's an independent system attached with the EVMs that allows voters to verify. वो अपना वेरिफिकेशन कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि 7 सेकंड्स के लिए वो डिस्प्ले होता है कि आपने किस कैंडिडेट को वोट किया है, राइट, ऑन and voters to verify their votes, whom they have cast their votes, whether they have cast their votes as intended. And when a vote is cast, a slip is printed and remains exposed to a transparent window for 7 seconds, showing the serial number, name and symbol of the candidate. And यदि उसमें किसी वोटर को लगता है कि वो ठीक नहीं है, जैसा उसने वोट किया वैसा नहीं है, देन ही कैन चैलेंज इट एंड वो वहाँ पर जो पोलिंग बूथ में प्रिजाइडिंग ऑफिसर है उनको कंप्लेंट कर सकते हैं एंड देन दिस इशू विल हैव टू बी टेकन इनटू अकाउंट एट द टाइम ऑफ काउंटिंग. And the law for using VVPATs was amended in 2013. In 2013, Supreme Court of India had permitted ECI to introduce VVPAT in a phased manner, calling it an indispensable requirement of free and fair elections, obviously. Right? It is always better if there is an audit trail and verified audit trail. So that goes without saying that it will ensure free and fair elections in our electoral system. Then, of course, this provision that persons in jail or police custody can contest elections. Now, initially in 2013, Supreme Court upheld an order of the Patna High Court declaring that a person who has no right to vote by reason of being in jail or in police custody is not an elector, is therefore not qualified to contest the election. जेल में है या वो he has no voting right. Person who is in jail and he has no voting right, so he is not an elector and therefore he is not qualified to contest elections to parliament or the state legislature. But in order to negate this order of the Supreme Court, two specific provisions have been included in the Representation of People's Act 1951 again. And the first provision expressly provides that by reason of prohibition to vote, either due to in jail or in police custody, a person whose name has been entered in the electoral roll shall not cease to be an elector. मतलब वो vote cast, he will not cease to be an elector. And the second provision expressly provides that a member of parliament or state legislature shall be disqualified only if he is so disqualified under the provisions of this act. So consequently, the persons in jail or in police custody are now allowed to contest the elections. Now they are allowed to contest the elections, but they will not cease to be electors as per these amendments which are brought about by parliament. So what I'm saying that Representation of People Act has also been amended, right, even in contravention of the Supreme Court order. And immediate disqualification of convicted MPs and MLAs. Now this was a major positive step. In 2013, the Supreme Court held that the charge-sheeted members of Parliament and MLAs or conviction on conviction for offences, they are convicted, right, will be immediately disqualified from holding membership of the House without being given a 3 months time for appeal. पहले 3 महीने का टाइम दिया जाता था अपील के लिए, but that is now after 2013. Supreme Court has clearly stated that they will immediately disqualify from holding membership of either House of Parliament or of state legislature. Because earlier they were given this 3 months time for appeal, as was the case before. So it is no longer the case. Then the concerned bench of the High Court struck down as unconstitutional Section 8(4) of the Representation of the People Act 1951 that allows convicted lawmakers a 3 months period for filing appeal to the higher court and to get a stay of conviction and sentence. The bench, however, made it clear that the ruling will be prospective. जो उसके पहले जिन लोगों ने फाइल कर दी थी अपील, उसके लिए एप्लीकेबल नहीं था, बाकी prospectively it was applied. And of course, it was in connection with Articles 202 and 191. 102, disqualification of members of Parliament, and 191 of the state legislature. Then, of course, I will come straight to ceiling on election expenditure in 2014. Increased in 2014, the central government raised the maximum ceiling on election expenditure by candidates for the Lok Sabha seat in bigger states to 70 lakhs from earlier 40 lakhs. And for other states and union territories, 54 lakhs, earlier 16 to 40 lakhs. So there was a major jump in this regard, brought in the year 2014. Central government raised this ceiling. Then, of course, photos of candidates on EVMs and ballot papers, particularly where namesakes are contesting. एक जैसे नाम वाले यदि कई सारे लोग इलेक्शन कॉन्टेस्ट कर रहे हैं सेम कंस्टिट्यूएंसी से, तो फिर फोटो उनका विथ नेम फोटो लगाना अनिवार्य है. So this is according to Election Commission's order. Any election being held after 1st May 2014, the ballot papers and EVMs will carry the picture of the candidate with his or her name and party symbol to avoid confusion among the electorates in constituencies where namesakes are contesting. एक जैसे नाम वाले लोग यदि contest कर रहे हैं, in that case. Then now here ceiling on cash donations has been lowered. तो पहले 20,000 थी, उसको घटा के 2,000 कर दिया. So in 2017 budget, the limit for anonymous cash donations by an individual to a political party has been lowered from 20,000 to 2,000. This means that now the political parties cannot receive more than 2,000 rupees as cash donation from a person. 2,000 rupees, not more than 2,000. However, they are not required to inform the Election Commission of India the details of persons who donate under rupees 2,000. Not required. And they must keep record of persons making above 2,000 donation. ये 2,000 करके भी डोनेशंस तो 10 बार करेंगे तो वो 20,000 हो जाएगा, या 100 बार करेंगे तो 2 लाख हो जाएगा. दैट मीन्स बेसिकली दिस लॉ कैन इजीली बी trespassed. Then cap on corporate contribution has also been lifted. In 2017 budget, the limit of corporate contribution from 7.5% of the net profit of the company's past 3 years financial year, 3 financial years average, has been removed. And this means that now a company can donate any amount of money to any political party. Further, the obligation of the company to report such donations in its profit and loss account have also been lifted. Now, this, of course, not a step in the right direction as such, but this has been brought about, and now companies can freely donate to political parties. And of course, introduction of electoral bonds in 2018. Now, this scheme has also been, criticized by many. In this, what happens is that the central government notifies it's through bond political parties can receive donation and then encash these bonds, right? And this scheme was announced in 2017 budget, and it is touted as an alternative to cash donations made to the political parties, and it is aimed at bringing clean money and substantial transparency into system of political funding. अब इसमें ये है, but still it has not worked well. The electoral bonds means the bonds which are issued in the nature of promissory note, which is a bearer banking instrument and does not carry the name of the buyer or payee, basically. And the electoral bonds may be purchased by any citizen of India or entities incorporated or established in India. And these bonds can be used for making donations to only those registered political parties which have secured not less than 1% of the votes polled in the last general election. The Lok Sabha or State Legislative Assembly. ये उसमें ruling condition कि those political parties which have not polled more than polled 1%, even 1% of the total number of votes polled, वो ये accept नहीं कर सकती. Other than that, they can. I mean, those who have secured not less than 1%, it's those who have secured more than 1% of the votes polled, they can accept. The electoral bonds can be encashed by an eligible political party only through a bank account and with authorized bank, and the electoral bonds are issued in the denomination of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, and 1 crore. Right. So, of course, this was touted as bringing about some transparency, but a lot of hassles have been reported in this also. And the information furnished by the buyer is treated as confidential by the authorized bank and is not to be disclosed, except, of course, for criminal case purposes and if demanded by a competent court. And foreign funding has also been allowed. In 2018 budget, the receiving of foreign funds by political parties has been allowed. And in other words, political parties can now receive funds from foreign companies. Now, according to the Foreign Contributions Act, Foreign Contributions Regulation Act 2010 has also been amended. Under this amendment, the definition of a foreign company has also been modified. Now, there are many challenges as far as the electoral reforms are concerned. Transparency and honesty, the one major area, one major challenge, which has to be brought about on all fronts, right? Accountability has to be brought about on all fronts. That is another major challenge. Responsiveness to change, of course. There has to be positive responsiveness, and of course, everybody must follow what has been stated as law or what has been stated by Supreme Court in its judgment. And the arms race effect, the ways to reduce must be found for, to reduce the overall cost of contesting elections for all parties and candidates while maintaining a level playing field for all. And criminals, the blocking the entry of criminal elements into the election process is a must. And winnability as the main criteria for choosing candidates must be strongly discouraged by the voters. मतलब पॉलिटिकल पार्टी जो कैंडिडेट सेलेक्ट करती है और फील्ड करती है तो इसी आधार पे करती है कि कौन जीत सकता है, राइट. But that should not be the criteria. If a person is having criminal record, he should effectively and patently be now stopped from contesting. And concept corruption, which is very pervasive as it is being known. Its conceptualization has to be broadened, and it has to be tackled in a very comprehensive way. Of course, laws are there, but something more than laws is required there. Rigorous implementation of the law is required. Existing law has to be rigorously implemented in order to achieve better results. So students, what I'm saying is that this is about the talk, and my name is Vishrut Abhinna, and please use this referral code VN10 for all your subscriptions with Unacademy. Thank you very much for listening to this talk. Thank you so much. Follow me up.